Greetings, math fans. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to find the slope of a line given 2 points. Now, back in the day, which is just the last lesson, if I gave you some points and you plotted those points, remember you did rise over run, you could see the top was how much you rise, up and down, and the bottom run, did you go left and right, and then you were able to calculate the slope. Well, what happens if I give you some big old nasty points like, 1 billion comma negative 37 million, and another point of 1 comma 2. So you couldn't do that, right? You're not going to plot that. So we're going to use a nice little friendly formula here, and this is a huge formula here. All right, so I'll put a box around even before I put the formula on here. All right, and it's m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, that is the slope formula. And if you think about it, it's you know how we did rise over run. We said, well, how much do we rise? And rise is the y value, right? If I actually draw an x y axis. Isn't the y value, that's rise over run. So it's like change in y over change in x. That's the run. And that's exactly what this y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 is. All right, so that is to find the slope of a line. Because we're going to use that nice little friendly formula. All right, and kids always have a hard time remembering that it's y over x. And if you weren't in class and you want to hear it, you can go to my video, which is on the main page about the yachts, because I'm not going to do the whole video right here. But the yachts comes in handy, y-o-x, because it's the y's on top and the x on the bottom. And the reason I kind of introduced the yachts is because kids back in the day always like to do x over y, because they say, well, x comes before y, so why don't we just do x over y? And that's wrong. It's got to be the y over x, because the rise is the y and the run is the x. Okay? And but real quickly here, because I think it's important, if I draw a picture of the ox, that's not a great picture of the ox. There's the ox. All right? So it's a very friendly creature. It lives in bussy woods. 4 powerful legs. It's very smiley. If you do it the wrong way, if you use the soy, which is really bad to use, that is the evil distant cousin of the yaks. Okay, let me draw a picture of the yak. Oh, first of all, here, I didn't point this out. That's the party hat. Okay, so it's a relatively festive creature. But this is the soy. So it's got scales. It's got multiple party hats. And of course, you all recognize this. That is the mean face. It's very scary. All right. So you do not. I'm going to put a big X through this guy. You do not want to use the soy. Okay. It's never X over Y, because if you do, you're going to probably get bitten, and it's just not a pretty thing. You got to send you down to the nurse. It's just not real pretty. All right. So you've got to use the yaks. Very important. All right. So let's actually do a couple problems here using the yaks. If I give you some problems, 2 points. So 2 comma 6 and 4 comma, let's say negative 2. So this is the way I want you to do this. And again, I show you guys things just because I want you to do it the way that I've seen people be more successful. Okay, well, we know real quickly, I'm going to write this out again. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, and this is the way I want you guys to start out the problem. I want you to write m equals and draw a line and put a negative and a negative. Okay, this needs to be written out like that. And the reason it needs to be written out like that is because if you have a bunch of negatives, you'll forget a negative, because you got subtraction signs, you get negative signs, and it gets very confusing, and it's easy to forget it. So if you draw this out first, so I can put that in your notes someplace, and let's do the problem now. All right, so let's call this x1, y1, let's label it, and x2, y2. right? X comes before y. All right, so let's do y2 minus y1. So negative 2. Oh, what did I tell you to do? Oh, boo, I didn't do it. So I'm going to put my negatives in here first. Okay, now I can say negative 2 and a 6. That goes on the top. And you got to keep the same order. So that's y2 and y1, and then x2, this is going to be 4 and a 2. All right, so negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. 4 minus 2 is 2, so my slope is negative 4. That's the answer to that problem. Okay, it's relatively easy. Let's try a couple more. Negative 6, negative 3, and negative, or let's call it 8 and negative 1. Okay, so lots of negatives, so I want you guys to do it this way. Okay, so x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, let's still stick them in there. y2, negative 1, and negative 3. And this is 8 and negative 6. Okay, so I didn't lose any signs, and I have my negative in here, so of course that becomes positive. That becomes positive. You can always use your calculator too. Okay, there's no reason for you guys to get these wrong, especially since you all have calculators. So negative 1 plus 3 is 2. 8 plus 6 is 14. Always reduce your fractions, so my slope is 1/7. Now let's say, math fans, you did it the other way around. Let's actually put the exact same point there. Negative 6, negative 3, and 8, negative 1. And what happens if I make this my first point? So this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. What happens if you do that? Well, let's check it out. So y2 minus y1. So m equals y2. So we'll put our double negative in here first. So negative 3 and negative 1. And the x's are negative 6 and 8. So that gives you a plus there. So negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. And negative 6 minus 8 is negative 14. A negative over negative is a positive, so it's 1/7. So my whole point is, math fans, it doesn't matter which point goes first, as long as you're consistent. Like for this problem, you couldn't say, x2 is negative 6 and y1 is negative 3. You have to keep consistent with which one, both of them are x2s or I'm sorry, 2s, or both of them are 1s, the y1 and x1. Okay, so you got to be really careful about that. All right, so let's just try a couple more here. Negative 7 and 2, and negative 4 and negative 8. Okay, so let's plug it all in here. M equals y2, so I'm going to make this one my 2 and this one my 1. So y2 minus y1, and x2 minus x1. Okay, that becomes plus. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. Negative 4 plus 7 is 3. So that's your answer, negative 10/3. Can't do anything with it. Please don't write it as negative 3 1/3. Okay, I don't want any mixed fractions. Everything's supposed to be an improper fraction for slope. Okay, because really when I graph it, then it's going to be down negative 10 or down 10 and to the right 3. Okay, so that is using the slope formula. Now I got a couple special cases here. One special case is this: 2 comma 5 and 2 comma negative 3. So let's figure that out. y2, so it's negative 3 and 5 and 2 and 2. So negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. Oh! Now if you stick this in your calculator, you're going to get an error. Please don't tell me that the slope is an error, because it's not an error. It is a slope. And this slope is actually undefined. Okay, it's undefined. Please, as I told you in the last lesson, do not use the word no slope. Okay, we do not use that word. It's bad, very bad to use no slope. So it is an undefined slope. That's the answer to that. All right, and let's give you another example here. negative 4 comma negative 3 and 7 negative 3. So m equals y2, so negative 3 and negative 3 and 7 and negative 4. So that becomes plus, that becomes plus. We get negative 3 plus 3 is 0 over 11. And if you put that in your calculator, you actually get 0. So that's what that answer is. This one is a 0 slope. Okay? And sometimes people always ask, they're like, well, what's the difference? Why is one 0 and why is the other one undefined? Well, I want you guys to think about what division is, right? A fraction is division. So let's look at the first one. 0 over 11 is 0. Because what you're saying is what times 11, so what times 11 equals 0? Well, isn't the answer 0? Okay, that's why this one's 0. But let's look at this one, negative 8 over 0. The same question is what times 0 equals negative 8? Right? So just like this one I said on the bottom, what times 11 equals 0? Well, 0. What times 0 equals negative 8? There is no answer. There's nothing that you can multiply by 0 to give you negative 8. That's why that one's undefined. Okay, so the deal is, if you ever have a problem where you get 0 over 5, that's 0. If you have 5 over 0, it's undefined. And again, a little trick here, undefined was a 0 on the bottom. Okay, and again, if you're not sure, always type in your calculator. This gives you an error, which is undefined. This one would give you 0, which then, of course, is 0. All right, that's pretty easy. But make sure you're careful about that. All right, and make sure you use the yacht and not the soy. All right, my friends, that's it. It's pretty mellow. Just make sure you use the formula when you're given 2 points. All right, have a good day. Adios. Goodbye.